Okay, in this lesson I've entitled it Shuffle, Copy, and Premults. And these are things that are one more little things we're going to do before we get into our first project, which will be the Alien Passes project, which is going to introduce you to layers and different channels and so forth. So this is the kind of layout I'm going to go ahead and go through with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a second version over here. And the files that I'm borrowing from today are, if I can get to them, the Alien. Let me go ahead and put this back to RGBA. Here we go. And you can see here's the Alien passes. Again, to get this thing read in, you just hit R for read, and then go in your folder, CG renders, and go to Alien passes. Make sure sequence is on, and say open. The other thing, of course, is the Sony A6300 face exposure. So we're going to talk about shuffle and shuffle copy first. These are very handy tools to shuffle around channels. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the shuffle node really quick. And at first glance, this node is very, very weird. I'm going to go ahead and put my properties bin to 1, keep things simple. It has a very weird interface, and it can be very daunting when you look at it and go, oh, I don't know about this. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in. Shuffle copies are a little bit different. So I'm going to make a shuffle copy node. So you can see there's a shuffle and a shuffle copy node. So the shuffle copy node actually has 2 inputs, and the best way I could describe this, it's like rescrambling your channels inside of Comcast. So if you have cable TV and you want to rechange, like instead of channel 5 being channel 5, you want channel 2 to be channel 5. That would be the shuffle node. Now if you're combining, say, an external channels such as Netflix and Comcast, you would add your 2 cable networks, or if you want to call them that, together with this node. Again, that's kind of a layman's term of describing this, but again, we're going to get into it. We're going to start out with the shuffle node. I'll go ahead and show you what that is. The shuffle node's very, very simple. You can see here it says there's an input and an output. It's sort of like a switchboard. Things are coming down and then they're being redefined here. So you can see that my RGBA is currently set to, I'm going to put my viewer to this here. You can see the Alien passes, right? So what's happening is the input 1, which would be this here, you can consider this to be input 1, okay? The input 1 is coming in, and the RGBA of this image, okay, which we're on right now, you can see RGBA. The R is going back into their R node. We're redefining this, but it's basically redefining the same thing. So green, the blue of the RGBA is going into the blue of the RGBA. The A of the RGBA is going into the A of the RGBA. So you got to look at it like a switchboard. Things are coming down, and these switches are switching off like a train track coming this way. So you can also do things such as, what if I wanted the red channel to be, of the RGBA, to be black? Okay, I'll put that there. If I want the green channel to be white, and then I want the blue channel, you can see right here, to be black. And what if I want, the alpha to remain the same, right? A for alpha, right? Okay, now we've got something different here in the RGBA. So let's take a look at these channels independently by either clicking here and going through RGBA, or just clicking here and going R, typing letter R, which is coming up black. I'm going to go to G. You can see it's coming up white. B, which is coming up black. And then I'll hit A, and then that's the alpha. See? So I can also do something like, I'll take the green of the red, the green of the RGBA and make it the red. So if I go back to the red, hit R for red, you can see I have a black and white representation of what was the green input. So that's kind of really cool. So usually you set these all by default. They usually go across like a diagonal here, and what that is just redefining this. So again, I could switch out anything I want in here. So I know that if I take a look at the Alien, there's all types of channels here. For instance, we have this one called the plate shot. So here's the plate shot. Let me go back to RGB information here. So you can see here's my plate shot. And what if I want to move this into the RGBA? Well, I'm going to put my viewer back to the RGBA channel, which is always important. A lot of people forget to do this, by the way. Make sure you're on the RGB channel like most of your time. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here and define that out. So I'm going to choose, pull the pull-down menu. You can see all the choices I have. I'm going to choose plate shot, and it automatically does it for me, red, green, blue, and if there is an alpha, it'll put an alpha in. So now you can see as I look through different channels, here's my alpha, here's my plate shot, holdout reflections, and so forth, right, the alien. What I have currently redefined in the RGBA is the plate shot. So this is a way of moving channels around, redefining channels. You could also introduce a new type of channel. Like for instance, I'll come over here and I will say, well, let's redefine the plate shot channel and make that the RGBA. So I just did that. Now if I go to my plate shot, you can see the alien's been dumped into here. So it's kind of like we just switched the channels. We did a little switcheroo, so to speak. So there's a whole bunch of things. Realize the 0 and the 1 is basically black and white, so you can do anything. So if I want to make the plate shot be all white in the red, green, blue, and alpha, you can come down here to your option here for plate shot, and you can see what we have. The individual channels are here one at a time. So you can see we have all these goodies, and we have plate alpha, plate blue, green, and red. These are all set to white currently. So you can see here. So again, I can kind of look at this with, you know, red, green, blue, and then the alpha is fully opaque. Okay, so that's what a shuffle node is. Once you get used to it and play around with it, and I recommend doing so, you'll be totally cool. All right, let's get a little bit more complicated here. This is a simple image here of an MPEG-4. There is no, if I go back to my RGBA, you can see there is no, nothing more than RGB, and I don't even think there's an alpha in here. Alpha, it's just set to black, so there's no alpha opaque information. So a shuffle copy node is sort of very similar, except it's just, it's like I have extra information coming in from another node. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a constant. I'm going to hit tab and type constant. And let's take that constant and change the format. We want to change it to the same format as this image, which is 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to put this to HD 1080. And let's go ahead and make our image green. So just pull this to green. Or I could just do, in this case, 0, 1, 0, which would be green. Okay. So with that said, we're going to actually put this into the channel. It's like it's having an outside TV channel, such as the Bravo network or something, or AMC or something, and bringing it into my Comcast cable network. So I'm going to go ahead and put this as 2, because it's the B-side paradigm. This is the main paradigm. And I'm going to go ahead and put this to 1, because it's the incoming input, just as this was 1. I'm going to put my viewer to the shuffle copy node. Double-click the shuffle copy node, and I'm going to create a new channel in here. So by default, I don't know why it does this, but you can see it says shuffle copy node. This default keeps your RGBA the same. So I usually come here and just make sure this is all the way across diagonal. So the incoming R of the RGBA will remain R, green will remain green, blue will remain blue, alpha will remain alpha. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new channel here. So I'm going to say new channel. It's going to ask for a name, and I'm going to go ahead and call it my, new green channel. I like underscores, by the way. If you go ahead and hit OK, it's going to give you an error message. It says name some channels for the layer. So you're required to actually autofill it, so I'll just put RGBA. Go ahead and click on it. There we go. It's going to fill some channels. I'm going to hit OK. And here you can see new green channel. Now I want to define what that is. Currently it's set to the RGBA, so if I were to take a look now, you see we have a new channel on here, but it's just the red, green, blue information. What I want to define is the input coming in from input 1, and I want the red, green, blue, alpha. So you can see it's red of the incoming input here is going to the red, green is going to the green, blue is going to the blue, alpha is going to the alpha. Okay, so now you can see we have an added channel, and it's stored up there as much as we can. The beauty of doing this sometimes is you can actually write this out if you wish to, and write it out as an EXR, which actually saves all these channels. So you could write this out as an EXR and it'll save up all these channels. Say you want to get everything in one specific channel, in one specific image sequence, you could write it all out as an EXR and have it all stored up as opposed to having multiple passes. Now it'll be very heavy in size, but that's that. Okay, so I want to talk about premult and multiplication here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a roto node. Let's go ahead and throw that up there. Now the beauty of these nodes, any node, is that you can come over to the tab for node and you can turn on this little thing called postage stamp, which allows you to see a preview of what it is that you're looking at. I'm going to go back to the roto node here and I'm going to put my output to RGBA just so I can see a visible representation. Really all I want is to make an alpha in here. I'm going to put my viewer back to myself and then make sure I'm on the right channel, which is RGBA. And then I'm going to hit Q for overlays, make sure my overlays are set to on. I'm going to go ahead and roto this. Again, I can roto something without it being attached in the pipeline. So I'm going to go ahead and just double click it and just draw out with this here, set to Bezier. And kind of just do that same thing we did in the previous tutorial, which is cut out my eyeball like that. I'm going to do a real sloppy job on this just for the sake of time. Now I showed you how to pre-mult by bringing it down the pipeline, but I'm going to show you how to use the most common used ways of adding in alphas. And what I want to do is, if I put my viewer to this roto node, you can see what it is. Now I'm going to make sure my roto node is set to the format. Now if I hit S for settings, you can see my full-size format is set to 2K. I want to stay in 1920 by 1080 because this image is 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to go ahead and hit S for settings and set this to HD 1080. That's going to conform this, as you can see, to widescreen to 16 by 9. I'm going to go ahead and use a copy node, and this works very similar just how we did for the shuffle copy node, except it's just inputting one specific channel at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and put this B for, the B-side paradigm, because that's the main pipe, and A is sort of like what we're putting in. So if I look at this copy node, what it is it's copying the channel of the RGB alpha. Okay, so if I look at my roto node here, put my viewer to it and hit A, you can see I've got alpha information being pushed out of this node. And then if I come here, I'm saying going to the alpha channel of this image. So now if I put my copy to this and take a look at the A channel, you can see we now have an alpha in there. But you can see I'm not cut out yet. I'm not physically, it's not cut out yet. I'm still looking at the RGB information. Well, that's where we have to pre-mult the image. And that's what happens. And what happens here is we're going to take this image here, okay, and then we're going to multiply, or pre-mult, this image against the values of black and white. Okay, so you can see there is a gradient here, which is not exactly black and white. This value is actually 0.62262, right? This value is like 0.33. So there is a little bit of a gradient happening here. And what it's going to do is going to take this specific pixel and times it by the original image. And in doing so, it's actually going to give us a transparency. Now remember, it's pre-multing the image itself, not the color pixels and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this through. And if you take a look now, let me put my pre-mult on it. You can see, voila, there we go. Now it's important to note that even in this situation, I didn't have any auto alpha on or anything like that. But if I go to the pre-mult now, you can see I have my A for alpha. Always, hit the A here to see it. And now you can see along the edges we have that nice gradient as it's happening there. It's important to realize that that gradient is, it's slowly losing the pixel values of what is the original skin behind the scenes. And it's always important to be aware of what is officially behind the scenes. So in other words, if I go back one step, you can see it's a gradation away of this stuff as it goes into this skin tone here, okay? So with that said, it's important to understand that whenever you're dealing with pre-multiplication objects that have alphas like this or cutouts, that any color correction work you do, you want to unpremult it, color correct it, and then premult it again. If you don't do that, you'll find artifacts around the line. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and add a grade node here, like this. And I'm going to go ahead and just grade this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and take my gamma, and I'll bring it down. Bring my gain up. It looks nasty, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit M for merge. Click anywhere and hit M for merge to make a merge node. And I'm going to put this as the A for a top. And B for background is going to be myself up here again, the original. Now, in order to make a dot node to extend this out, I can hold down Command or Control, and I'll just go ahead and extend this out. So if you just hold down Command, you can just pull out a nice dot node to keep things nice. Again, the way you work in compositing is top to bottom, left to right. We're slowly moving this way. So just be aware of that. You don't want to be doing swirlies and getting to the point where you paint yourself into a corner or something weird like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put these together. And now you can see the color corrected version and then the bottom part. You're going to start to see an artifact here around the edges of myself, which will be maybe a black line or something. Now, in order to see that more profoundly, I'm going to take this grade node and we're going to go ahead and clone it. So I'm going to go ahead and right click it and say Edit Clone. Clone will have this little line here that's kind of brown. If you ever want to hide that line, you can hit Alt-E. Alt-E will hide that line if you kind of get annoyed by it. But it's good to know it's there because it's a clone. And what does a clone do? It's sort of like a bee swarm. It doesn't matter if I change this node or this node. It changes both at the same time. So if I change this back here to 0.53, this node changed to 0.53. So to kind of see that a little bit better, I'll put my viewer to 2. And you can see I'll put both these grade nodes up, and you can see as I change one, it's affecting the same one. See? So now if I look at my merge, I'll go ahead and click it. There we go. And let's see how that looks. Do you see this artifact here? You can almost, if you zoom up, you can hardly see it, but there is like this weird line that's coming down my face here. It's very hard to see, but it is there. Now, it's important to realize when you do any color correction, like I mentioned before, on an alpha object, which if I put my viewer to this premult here, you can see this is an alpha object, right? It's got an alpha, it's cut out. As I mentioned before, you want to unpremult, which pulls you out of the premult state, where the alpha is no longer being premulted by the original plate. And then you're going to hit the grade, which we're doing right now, and then we're going to hit the premult. We're going to pre-mult it again, otherwise it's not going to go on the original plate. If I go ahead and put my viewer to this, you can see here's the image. If I don't pre-mult it, things can get weird, so I want to make sure it's pre-multed. So now we no longer have, we shouldn't have that artifact. Let me see if I kind of disable and re-enable. See that right there? That black outline goes away when I make sure that any color grading I do, that could be color correction, that could be anything, is make sure I unpremult it, do the color correction, and premult it. So important. Now, it's important to know that this is 3 nodes. It's a lot of nodes, and sometimes you don't want to have to kill yourself with having 3 nodes, although in compositing, it's best to have them there so that other compositors using your work know what you're doing. So it's not a good idea to do what I'm about to show you, which is a little bit of an easier process. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these, and we still have that nasty artifact. But what I can do inside these is Nuke has built a option here which unpremults at the beginning, lets you do your color grade, and premults it. So it does it behind the scene here. And I'll just say unpremult by RGBA. And it seems like we've got an issue here. This might have to do with the fact that, let's see, non-existent channel used for unpremult. Oh, that's because this image is, I think it's because this image is not set to, there we go. I got to put auto alpha, I guess, eventually. So whenever you get a JPEG, make sure you have auto alpha on there. It's just important. Obviously, it has an issues when there's no alpha in the channel. So you can see by turning on auto alpha, I do have a opaque for this because a JPEG is really just RGB. So once again, you can see that artifact is gone. If I turn it off, okay, I'll just turn this off, the artifact returns. See that? This is something that could build up over time, and it could really look nasty, so it's important to be self-aware of this reality. as you kind of go through Nuke and so forth. It's just important to realize that whenever you're dealing with issues like this, anything in that term needs to be dealt with an unpremult and then a premult. So that's pretty much it. That's a kind of a nice introduction of just a series of channels. The next thing we're going to be jumping into will be going into this alien render here and dealing with, okay, how do we actually combine and just getting used to using different channels inside of Nuke.